I'm Sophia, 30 years old, and that day at the hospital should have been one of the happiest of my life. The ultrasound technician had just confirmed we were having a boy. My heart was bursting with joy as I stepped into the hallway looking for Derek, who'd stepped out to take a call. Walking toward the elevator area, I heard familiar voices that made me freeze. My husband's deep tone, followed by a woman's hushed response. When I realized it was Stephanie, my pregnant best friend, my legs nearly gave out beneath me. Their words shattered my world in an instant. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey from heartbreak to finding strength I never knew I had. Before that devastating day at the hospital, I had what many would consider a perfect life. Derek and I had been married for 3 wonderful years, and our relationship seemed like something straight out of a fairy tale. We met during my final year of college at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was charming, ambitious, and made me laugh like no one else could. After dating for 2 years, he proposed during a weekend trip to Maine, and I couldn't say yes fast enough. I had built a successful career as a marketing executive at a respected firm in Boston. My hard work had recently earned me a promotion to senior manager, overseeing a team of 12 talented professionals. Derek was equally successful as a financial analyst at a prestigious investment firm. Together, we had purchased our dream home in a quiet suburb just outside the city, a beautiful colonial with 4 bedrooms and a spacious backyard where we imagined our future children would play. After settling into our new home and establishing our careers, we decided it was the perfect time to start a family. We were financially stable, emotionally ready, and excited about becoming parents. When I saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, we celebrated with expensive champagne, just a sip for me, and spent the night talking about names and planning the nursery. Stephanie had been my best friend since our freshman year of college when we were randomly assigned as roommates. We bonded instantly over our shared love of true crime podcasts and midnight pizza runs. She stood by me through every important moment of my life. She was my maid of honor at our wedding, the first person I called when I got promoted, and my most trusted confidant. 2 months before my pregnancy, Stephanie had announced her own pregnancy. As a single woman who had always wanted children, she explained that she had decided to use a sperm donor rather than wait for the right partner. I was thrilled for her, and we joked about how perfect it was that our children would grow up together as best friends, just like us. Stephanie had faced more than her share of challenges. Her parents died in a car accident during our junior year of college, leaving her with no close family. She struggled with depression after their deaths, and I had supported her through those dark times. When she lost her job last year due to company downsizing, I helped her update her resume and connected her with contacts in my professional network. She eventually found a position as a marketing coordinator at a smaller firm. The excitement of being pregnant together seemed to strengthen our bond even further. We attended prenatal yoga classes together, exchanged articles about pregnancy and parenting, and spent weekends shopping for maternity clothes and baby items. We even talked about coordinating our maternity leaves so we could support each other during those first challenging weeks with newborns. Looking back, there were subtle changes in Derek's behavior that I should have noticed. He began working late more frequently, often coming home after I had already gone to bed. His phone would ping with notifications that he would quickly dismiss when I was nearby. There were unexplained expenses on our credit card statements that he vaguely attributed to client meetings or work expenses. Derek also started spending an unusual amount of time helping Stephanie with various tasks around her house, fixing a leaky faucet, assembling furniture for the nursery, helping her move some items into storage to make room for baby equipment. I thought nothing of it at the time, in fact. I appreciated his kindness toward my friend who didn't have a partner to help with these things. My trust in both of them was complete and unwavering. Not once did I suspect that anything inappropriate was happening. When Stephanie would call or text Derek directly about needing help with something, I encouraged him to assist her. I believed I was fortunate to have such a caring husband and that Stephanie was lucky to have supportive friends during her pregnancy. The morning of my 20-week ultrasound. Derek seemed unusually nervous. He spilled his coffee at breakfast and changed his shirt twice before we left for the hospital. I attributed his behavior to excitement about potentially learning our baby's gender. He held my hand tightly during the drive to the hospital, but his palm was sweaty. And he kept glancing at his phone whenever it buzzed. "Are you hoping for a boy or a girl?" I asked, trying to ease the tension I sensed in him. "Either is fine," he replied distractedly. "As long as the baby is healthy." When we arrived at the hospital and checked in for the appointment, Derek's phone rang. He looked at the screen and said, "I need to take this. Work emergency. I'll be right back." I nodded understanding, completely unaware that this work call would lead me to discover the truth that would forever change our lives. As I stood frozen near the elevator bank, partially hidden behind a large potted plant, the conversation between my husband and best friend unfolded like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "We need to figure this out before it's too late," Derek was saying, his voice tense but hushed. "Sophia's so excited about the baby. You should have seen her face in there." I know," Stephanie replied, her voice trembling. "I feel terrible too, but what are we supposed to do now? Both of us are pregnant, and one or both of these babies could be yours." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had to grip the wall to keep from collapsing. My husband and best friend. Together. Both pregnant, possibly with his children. "We need to get paternity tests done as soon as possible," Derek continued. "For both babies." "And then what?" Stephanie asked. "If my baby is yours, are you going to leave Sophia? And what if both babies are yours?" "God, we've made such a mess." "I don't know what I'm going to do," Derek admitted, and I could hear the conflict in his voice. "I care about you, Stephanie. You know that. But Sophia's my wife, and now she's carrying my child too. This was never supposed to happen." "You can't just abandon me," Stephanie said, her voice taking on a manipulative tone I'd never heard from her before. "I've been alone my whole life, and now finally I thought I had someone. You promised me, Derek. You said if my baby was yours, you'd be there for us. And I will be," Derek assured her. "One way or another, I'll support my child. But this is complicated now. Sophia doesn't deserve this. And I do?" Stephanie's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. "I didn't get pregnant alone, Derek. You were right there with me, telling me how unhappy you were in your marriage. How Sophia was always working and never had time for you. I felt physically ill. The nausea that had plagued my first trimester returned full force. And I swallowed hard to keep from vomiting right there in the hallway. My head spun with questions and realizations. The late nights. The helpful visits to Stephanie's house. The sperm donor story. It had all been lies." "Keep your voice down," Derek hissed. "Someone might hear us." "I don't care anymore," Stephanie said, though she did lower her voice. "I'm tired of sneaking around. Tired of being the other woman. 6 months of hiding, Derek. 6 months. And now there's a baby involved. Possibly 2. 6 months. They'd been carrying on this affair for half a year. Right under my nose. While I was working late to secure my promotion, while I was trusting them both implicitly, they were betraying me in the worst possible way." "We'll figure it out," Derek said. "Let's not talk here. Sophia could be done any minute. I'll come by your place tonight." "Fine," Stephanie agreed. "But we need to make decisions soon. I'm showing more every day. And people are going to start asking questions about the father." "I know. I'll tell Sophia I have a work dinner tonight." Another lie to add to the pile. How many work dinners had actually been nights with Stephanie? How many times had I wished him a productive evening while he was betraying our marriage vows? I couldn't bear to hear any more. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I silently backed away from my hiding spot. Some instinct for self-preservation kept me from confronting them right there. I needed time to think. To process, to decide how to handle this catastrophic betrayal. Instead of returning to the ultrasound area where they might spot me, I took a side elevator down to the parking garage. My hands shook so badly I could barely retrieve my car keys from my purse. Once inside my car, the tears I'd been holding back flooded out in gasping sobs that left me struggling to breathe. My phone began ringing, Derek wondering where I was. I silenced it and started the engine. There was no way I could face him right now without completely falling apart. And I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken. The drive home passed in a blur. Traffic lights, stop signs, other vehicles, none of it registered. Somehow operating on autopilot. I arrived safely at our house, the dream home that now felt like a stage set for a life that had been nothing but an illusion. Inside, I wandered from room to room, seeing everything with new eyes. The photos of Derek and me on our honeymoon, at friends' weddings, celebrating anniversaries, all of them now tainted. Had he already been involved with Stephanie in the most recent ones? The nursery we had started preparing, would it now be one of 2 nurseries he would be furnishing? My phone continued to light up with calls and messages from Derek. Where are you? Why did you leave without me? Is everything okay with the baby? Please call me, I'm worried. The concerned husband act. How convincing he was. I wondered if he was texting these messages while standing right next to Stephanie. I turned off my phone and curled up on our bed, one hand resting protectively on my small baby bump. I'm so sorry. I whispered to my unborn son. I'm sorry your father has done this to us. But I promise you I'll figure this out. We'll be okay. For the next few hours. I allowed myself to feel every painful emotion, the shock, the betrayal, the rage, the heartbreak. But through it all, a small voice inside me kept saying that I needed to be strategic. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had my son to consider, and I needed to make decisions that would protect both of us. By the time I heard Derek's key in the front door, I had cried myself dry. Now, a cold clarity was setting in. I would not be a victim. I would not be manipulated. And I would not allow Derek and Stephanie to control what happened next. ## part 4. The confrontation and denial. Sophia? Derek called out as he entered the house. His voice carried up the stairs, laced with what sounded like genuine concern. Are you here? What happened? Why did you leave the hospital without me? I remained seated on the edge of our bed, listening to his footsteps moving through the house. My hands were steady now, my breathing controlled. I had decided to confront him, but on my terms. Sophia. He appeared in the doorway of our bedroom, his face a mask of worry. I've been calling you for hours. I was terrified something happened to you or the baby. Something did happen, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Just not what you're thinking. He stepped into the room. Confusion replacing concern. What do you mean? Is the baby okay? Our son is fine, I said, watching his face light up at the confirmation of our baby's gender. Physically, at least. Emotionally. His world has been shattered, along with mine. But he doesn't know that yet. I do. Derek's expression shifted subtly. A flicker of unease crossed his features before he controlled it. I don't understand what you're talking about. Did the doctor say something after I stepped out? No, Derek. I overheard something after you stepped out. Something you never intended for me to hear. He froze, and I could almost see his mind racing, calculating, trying to determine exactly what I might have heard and how to respond. What are you talking about? He asked, opting for continued denial. I'm talking about your conversation with Stephanie by the elevators, I said, keeping my voice level. I heard everything. About your 6-month affair. About her baby possibly being yours. About the paternity test you're planning. About your promise to be there for her. His face drained of color. Sophia, I can explain. Can you? I interrupted. Can you explain sleeping with my best friend while I was working late to build our future? Can you explain letting me believe her baby was from a sperm donor? Can you explain planning to come to her place tonight while telling me you had a work dinner? You don't understand, he began, his voice desperate. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Derek? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think. My husband and my best friend betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now you're both trying to figure out how to handle the fact that you might have gotten both of us pregnant. It was a mistake, he said, slumping down onto the chair in the corner of our bedroom. A terrible mistake that shouldn't have happened. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home, I replied coldly. What you did was a series of deliberate choices. For 6 months. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Stephanie's name flashed on the screen. Derek's phone chimed in his pocket at the same moment. That would be your partner in crime, I said. No doubt wondering why you're not responding to her messages. Wondering if you've been caught. Derek pulled out his phone, glanced at it, then quickly put it away. Sophia, please. We need to talk about this rationally. For the baby's sake. Don't you dare use our son as a shield, I snapped. The first crack appearing in my composed facade. You didn't think about him when you were with Stephanie. It just happened, Derek said weakly. We didn't plan it. Things like this don't just happen, Derek. Tell me how it started. I deserve at least that much truth from you. He sighed heavily, running his hands through his hair. It started at Jason and Lauren's New Year's party. You had that terrible migraine and stayed home. Stephanie and I both had too much to drink, and when I drove her home. He trailed off. And after that first night? You both felt so guilty you decided to keep doing it for 6 more months. The sarcasm in my voice was razor-sharp. We tried to end it several times, he claimed. But there were feelings involved. It got complicated. Feelings, I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. And what about your feelings for me? For our marriage? I love you, Sophia. He said, looking up at me with pleading eyes. I never stopped loving you. That's not love, Derek. That's not even close to love. His phone buzzed again, and mine followed suit. Stephanie was getting persistent. She's probably panicking right now, I observed. Wondering if her perfect plan is falling apart. There was no plan, Derek insisted. And when she got pregnant, she didn't do it on purpose. Something in his tone made me pause. But you're not completely sure about that, are you? His silence was answer enough. How many other people know? I asked. How many of our friends have been laughing behind my back? No one knows, he said quickly. We were very careful. Clearly not careful enough to use protection, I retorted. Derek winced. Sophia, we need to figure out what happens next. For both babies. No, you need to figure out what happens next. I already know what I'm doing. I'm protecting myself and my son from people who would hurt us and lie to us. What does that mean? Alarm crept into his voice. It means I'm not making any decisions tonight. It means you'll be sleeping in the guest room until I decide what I want to do. And it means that if you try to spin this to make me look like the bad guy to our friends or family, you'll regret it. I wouldn't do that, he protested. You've already done things I never thought you would do, I pointed out. My trust in your character is completely shattered. We sat in tense silence for several moments before Derek spoke again. What about Stephanie? He asked cautiously. What about her? My voice was ice. She's dead to me. Sophia. She's been your best friend for years. And how did she repay that friendship? By sleeping with my husband and possibly carrying his child. Some friend. Derek looked defeated. This is such a mess. A mess you created, I reminded him. Now get out of my room. I can't stand to look at you right now. He stood slowly. We'll need to talk about this again when you're calmer. I'm perfectly calm, I said. And don't mistake my calmness for weakness. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. After Derek left, I locked the bedroom door behind him. Then, on a sudden impulse, I took out my phone and turned on the voice recorder app. If there were going to be conversations about custody, support, and divorce in my future, I wanted to be prepared with evidence of his admissions. That night, lying alone in what had been our bed, I made a promise to myself and my unborn son. We would emerge from this stronger than before. Derek and Stephanie had underestimated me. They thought I would fall apart. That I would be so devastated I would agree to whatever arrangement they proposed. They were wrong. They had no idea what I was capable of when protecting what mattered most to me. 3 days after the confrontation with Derek, I agreed to meet Stephanie at a quiet cafe across town. Derek had been sleeping in the guest room, walking on eggshells around me, alternating between apologies and attempts to discuss practical arrangements for the future. I had maintained my composure, revealing little about my thoughts or plans. When I entered the cafe, I spotted Stephanie immediately. At 22 weeks pregnant, her belly was more pronounced than mine. She was nervously shredding a napkin, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Good, I thought. She should be crying. Sophia, she said as I approached, half rising from her chair. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Sit down, I said coldly. I'm not here for hugs and tears. She sank back into her seat, her hands protectively cradling her bump. The gesture made my blood boil. That could be my husband's child she was carrying, the half-sibling to my son. I don't even know where to start, she said, her voice quavering. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it? Or sorry you got caught? I asked, setting my purse on the table and taking out my phone, placing it between us. Her eyes flickered to it nervously. Both, she admitted. What we did was unforgivable. I betrayed you in the worst way possible. Why? I asked simply. After everything we've been through together, after all the ways I've supported you. Why Derek? Why my husband? Stephanie's eyes welled with fresh tears. It wasn't planned, Sophia. That night at Jason and Lauren's New Year's party when you were sick. Derek was so attentive, driving me home, making sure I got in safely. We had both been drinking and one thing led to another. I finished for her. The oldest excuse in the book. After that first night, we both felt terrible, she continued. We agreed it would never happen again. But then, a few weeks later, my heating system broke down during that cold snap in February. You were in Chicago for that marketing conference, and I called Derek for help. How convenient. I remarked sarcastically. It just kept happening. And then feelings got involved, and it became so complicated. She looked down at her hands. Derek told me things weren't good between you two. That you were always working, that you didn't have time for him anymore. So this is my fault? I asked incredulously. I was working hard for our future. For the family we planned to have. No, she backpedaled quickly. It's not your fault at all. We made terrible choices. I made terrible choices. And then you got pregnant, I prompted. With a sperm donor. Stephanie's face crumpled. That was the biggest lie of all. I found out I was pregnant in April, and I was terrified. I knew it was Derek's. There hadn't been anyone else. Did you get pregnant on purpose, Stephanie? I asked directly, watching her face carefully. She hesitated just a fraction too long before answering. No, of course not. You're lying, I said with certainty. I've known you for 12 years. I know when you're lying. Tears streamed down her face as she finally broke. Okay. Yes. I stopped taking my birth control. Derek was talking about how much he wanted children. But you kept saying you wanted to wait another year. I thought if I got pregnant, he would leave you for me. The calculated betrayal stunned me despite my suspicions. You deliberately got pregnant to steal my husband? I was in love with him, she sobbed. I still am. And I thought he loved me too. He said he did. And when I announced my pregnancy, I asked, what then? It ruined everything, she admitted. He was trapped. We both were. He started pulling away from me, spending more time with you again. That's why I've been pushing him to make a decision, to tell you the truth. But then you found out on your own. How many people know about your affair? I demanded. No one, she insisted. Too quickly. Stephanie, I warned. She squirmed uncomfortably. Lauren might suspect something. She saw Derek and me talking too closely at her Memorial Day barbecue. And Jason once questioned Derek about why his car was parked on their street when he was supposedly at work. Your street is 2 blocks from mine. My stomach clenched. More humiliation. More friends who might have known or suspected but said nothing to me. Anyone else? I might have confided in Megan, she admitted, naming another college friend of ours. But only vaguely. I didn't name Derek specifically. But she figured it out, I stated, not questioning. Stephanie nodded miserably. I took a deep breath, fighting to maintain control. Show me your phone. What? She looked startled. Your phone. I want to see your messages with Derek. Sophia, that's private. Nothing about this situation is private anymore, I interrupted. You forfeited privacy when you slept with my husband. The phone, Stephanie. Reluctantly, she handed over her iPhone. I knew her passcode, her parents' anniversary, and easily unlocked it. I went straight to her message thread with Derek. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Hundreds of messages dating back months. Explicit exchanges. Photos I could never unsee. Plans for their meetups. Lies they'd coordinated to tell me. Discussions about her pregnancy and later, about mine. You were with him the day I told you both I was pregnant, I said, my voice hollow as I read a message from that date. You went to his office afterward and slept with him there. Stephanie couldn't even look at me. I was upset. Confused. I thought he was going to leave you for me and our baby, and then suddenly you were pregnant too. I kept scrolling, each message another knife to my heart. And then I found something that made me physically recoil. You asked him to leave me 2 weeks ago, I said, reading the message aloud. I can't keep sharing you with her. Our baby deserves a full-time father, not visitation schedules. Tell Sophia after the ultrasound. It's time. Stephanie's silence confirmed it all. You were never going to tell me about the affair, were you? I realized. The plan was for Derek to leave me, pregnant with his child, for you and your baby. It wasn't like that. She tried weakly. It's right here in black and white, Stephanie. I pushed the phone back toward her in disgust. God, I don't even know who you are anymore. As if on cue, my phone rang. Derek's parents' number flashed on the screen. With a sense of dread, I answered. Sophia, dear, Patricia, my mother-in-law began, her voice overly sweet. Derek told us about the situation. We wanted to reach out and encourage you to consider forgiveness. For the baby's sake. Families should stay together, especially with children involved. My blood ran cold. Did Derek also tell you that he's been having an affair with my best friend for 6 months and that she's also pregnant with what might be his child? The shocked silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. I thought not, I said. I'll let Derek fill you in on those details. Goodbye, Patricia. I hung up and looked at Stephanie's horrified face. He's spinning the story already, I told her. Making me out to be the unreasonable one. Did you know he was doing that? No, she whispered. He told me he was going to tell his parents everything. Another lie to add to the pile, I said, standing up. We're done here. Sophia, wait, she pleaded. What happens now? With the babies? With Derek? That's not your concern anymore, I replied. You're not my friend. You're not part of my life. The only connection we'll have going forward is that our children might share a father. Nothing more. As I walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Natalie. Just booked a flight. I'll be there tomorrow. You're not facing this alone. For the first time since the hospital, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone. And I was stronger than Derek and Stephanie realized. That afternoon, I contacted a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. As I sat in Rachel Bennett's office explaining my situation, I felt a strange sense of empowerment beginning to replace the shock and pain. They've underestimated you, Rachel observed after hearing my story. That gives us an advantage. Let's use it. A week after my meeting with Stephanie, Derek asked if we could talk when I got home from work. His tone had shifted from apologetic to businesslike, which immediately put me on guard. When I arrived, I found not only Derek waiting for me but Stephanie as well, sitting uncomfortably on our living room sofa. What is she doing here? I demanded, refusing to take off my coat or sit down. Please. Sophia, Derek said, his voice placating. We thought it would be good for all of us to talk together. To find a solution that works for everyone. A solution, I repeated flatly. To the problem of you cheating on me and fathering a child with my former best friend? While I'm also pregnant with your baby. It's a complicated situation, Derek acknowledged. But we're all adults and there are children involved. So, what's your proposed solution? I asked, already suspecting where this was heading. Derek and Stephanie exchanged a look that confirmed they had rehearsed this conversation. We've been thinking, Derek began carefully, that perhaps we could find a way to make this work. For the children to know each other as siblings. For all of us to co-parent effectively. Co-parent, I echoed. And what exactly does that look like in your mind? Stephanie spoke up. Her voice tentative. We thought maybe we could live near each other. The children could spend time together. We could have family gatherings for birthdays and holidays. One big, extended family. I laughed, the sound harsh and devoid of humor. You can't be serious. You expect me to play happy families with the 2 people who betrayed me most? To smile across the Thanksgiving table at my husband's mistress? Former mistress, Derek corrected quickly. That part of our relationship is over. We've agreed it was a mistake. But we need to think about the children now. How convenient for you both, I said coldly. You get to have your affair, create this mess, and then expect me to smooth it all over so you don't have to feel bad about what you did. That's not fair, Stephanie protested weakly. Fair? I nearly shouted the word. You want to talk to me about what's fair? Was it fair when you deliberately got pregnant to steal my husband? Was it fair when you both lied to my face for months? Derek stood up, his hands raised in a calming gesture that only infuriated me more. Sophia, please. Getting upset isn't good for the baby. Don't you dare, I hissed. Don't you dare use my pregnancy as a weapon against me. We're just trying to find a peaceful solution, Derek insisted. Think about it. Wouldn't it be better for your son to have a relationship with his father? With his half-sibling? My son will have whatever relationship with you that the court deems appropriate, I said firmly. And that's all we have to discuss. Derek's expression hardened. So you're planning to use my child as a punishment? To keep him from me because you're angry? I'm planning to protect my son from people who lie, cheat, and manipulate, I corrected him. And speaking of manipulation, would you like to explain why you moved $20,000 from our joint savings account to your personal account yesterday? The flash of guilt on his face confirmed what my attorney had advised me to check for. That's not what it looks like, he stammered. I was just moving some funds around for investments. Really? Which investments specifically? I pressed. This is exactly the kind of hostility that concerns me, Derek pivoted, addressing Stephanie as if seeking an ally. How can we co-parent effectively when she's being so vindictive? Don't talk about me like I'm not standing right here, I snapped. And don't pretend this meeting is anything other than an attempt to manipulate me into accepting whatever arrangement benefits you too. I turned to leave the room, done with the conversation, when Derek grabbed my arm to stop me. His grip was tight enough to hurt. Let go of me, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Not until you listen to reason, he insisted, his fingers digging into my skin. You're not thinking clearly. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The last thread of attachment I felt to the man I thought I had married severed completely. Take your hand off me right now, I said, enunciating each word, or I will call the police and report you for assault. Stephanie gasped. Derek, let her go. The shock in his eyes as he released my arm told me he hadn't recognized the line he'd just crossed. Or perhaps he hadn't recognized the woman I was becoming, someone who wouldn't tolerate his abuse, manipulation, or disrespect. This meeting is over, I stated. Any further communication will go through my attorney. I filed for divorce this morning. Divorce? Derek looked genuinely surprised, as if he'd expected me to eventually cave to his demands. You can't be serious. Rachel Bennett from Hartman, Bennett, and Klein will be serving you papers tomorrow, I informed him coldly. I suggest you find your own representation quickly. You're making a huge mistake, Derek warned, his voice taking on a threatening edge I'd never heard before. If you want to play hardball, fine. But remember, I make 3 times what you do. I can afford better lawyers. And judges tend to favor joint custody these days. Are you threatening to take my child? I asked, making sure my phone in my pocket was still recording. I'm saying I have rights, Derek replied. And I will exercise them fully if you insist on being unreasonable. Noted, I said simply, turning to leave again. Sophia, please. Stephanie called after me, tears streaming down her face. This isn't what we wanted. What you wanted, I said without turning around, was for me to quietly accept being deceived and disrespected. To put your comfort above my dignity. That's not going to happen. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and locked the door behind me, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and adrenaline. I could hear Derek and Stephanie arguing in hushed tones downstairs. Good. Let them turn on each other. That night, as I tried to calm myself with deep breathing exercises, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen followed by a warm trickle between my legs. When I rushed to the bathroom and saw blood, panic seized me. I pounded on the guest room door where Derek was sleeping. I'm bleeding, I told him through the door. I need to go to the hospital. The drive to the emergency room was tense and terrifying. Derek tried to take my hand, but I pulled away, focusing only on the precious life inside me that I couldn't bear to lose. After several agonizing hours of examinations and monitoring, the doctor confirmed that the baby was stable. "But this is a warning sign," she told me seriously. "Your blood pressure is elevated, and you're showing early signs of stress-related complications. You need to reduce your stress levels immediately and get more rest, or you risk preterm labor." As we drove home in silence, Derek finally spoke. "This changes things, Sophia. You heard the doctor. You need to reduce stress. Fighting me on custody, going through a contentious divorce, that's all stress you don't need." I turned to look at him, incredulous. "Are you seriously using a pregnancy complication that you caused through your actions to try to manipulate me into doing what you want?" "I'm thinking about the baby," he insisted. "No. You're thinking about yourself. As always." I turned away from him, looking out the car window at the pre-dawn streets. "I'm calling my sister in the morning. I'm going to stay with her for a while." "You can't just leave," Derek protested. "This is your home too." "This hasn't been my home since I found out it was built on lies," I replied quietly. "And the doctor didn't say to eliminate all stress. She said to reduce it. Removing myself from your presence is the most effective stress reduction I can think of." When we arrived back at the house, I went straight upstairs and called Natalie, despite the early hour. She answered immediately. "I'm coming to get you," she said once I explained what had happened. "Pack your bags. You're staying with me until this is sorted out." As the first light of dawn broke through the bedroom windows, I made a decision. I would not allow Derek to use my pregnancy as leverage. I would not let him or Stephanie dictate the terms of my future or my child's. And I would not stay one more night in a house that now felt like a prison of betrayal. The 2 months I spent living with Natalie in her downtown apartment were transformative. Away from Derek's manipulation and Stephanie's tearful apologies, I found clarity and strength I hadn't known I possessed. On my attorney Rachel's advice, I had documented everything: the affair admission, Derek's financial maneuvers, his threatening behavior, and the doctor's warnings about my pregnancy complications. Rachel was brilliant, methodical, and utterly unintimidated by Derek's attempts to leverage his higher income into an advantage. "Money helps," she acknowledged during one of our strategy sessions. "But evidence and behavior matter more, especially in family court. And frankly, you've been smarter than he is every step of the way." I had followed her guidance perfectly. While Derek had immediately hired an aggressive, high-profile divorce attorney known for scorched-earth tactics, I had quietly gathered financial records, backed up text messages, and recorded conversations legal in our state with one-party consent. When Derek's attorney demanded access to my medical records, claiming concern about my mental stability during pregnancy, Rachel countered by requesting a full psychological evaluation of Derek, citing his pattern of deception and emotional abuse. "They're trying to paint you as unstable and unfit," Rachel explained. "It's a common tactic when a father wants to contest custody. But it won't work if we stay one step ahead." And stay ahead we did. When Derek's team submitted financial disclosures that conveniently omitted several investment accounts I knew existed, Rachel was ready with documentation I had collected over the years. "Your meticulous record-keeping is a godsend," she told me appreciatively. "Most clients don't come to me this prepared." While the legal battle continued, I focused on creating stability for myself and my unborn son. My boss, Angela, had been surprisingly supportive when I explained my situation. "Family comes first," she said firmly. "We can adjust your workload and allow more remote days. Just keep delivering the quality work you always have." Her understanding was a lifeline, allowing me to maintain my career while navigating this crisis. It also ensured I'd have financial independence regardless of how the divorce settlement played out. Derek's initial attempts to portray me as the villain in our social circle backfired spectacularly. While some mutual friends awkwardly tried to stay neutral, many others rallied around me, particularly after learning the full story. Lauren, at whose New Year's party the affair had begun, showed up at Natalie's apartment one evening with tears in her eyes. "I suspected something at our Memorial Day barbecue," she admitted. "The way they were whispering in the corner of the yard. But I convinced myself I was imagining things. You were my friend too. And I should have said something. I'm so sorry, Sophia. Her honesty was refreshing after months of deception, and her support meant more than she knew. Even more surprising was the call I received from Patricia, Derek's mother, 6 weeks after I'd moved out. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice heavy with regret. Derek didn't tell us the whole truth. When we learned what really happened, well, Arthur and I raised him better than that. We want you to know we don't condone his behavior. And we still consider you family, regardless of what happens with the divorce. Her words brought tears to my eyes, the first I'd shed in weeks. Thank you, Patricia. That means a lot to me. And that grandson of ours, she continued, we hope will still be allowed to be part of his life. Of course, I assured her. He'll need all the loving grandparents he can get. The most dramatic turning point came when the paternity test results confirmed what we had all suspected. Both my baby and Stephanie's were indeed Derek's children. Stephanie gave birth to a daughter in late September while I was beginning my 3rd trimester. Derek immediately tried to use this confirmation as leverage. Now there's no question. His text message read, "These children are siblings. They should grow up knowing each other. We should reconsider the cooperative parenting arrangement I suggested." Rachel advised me on my response, acknowledge the sibling relationship without committing to any specific arrangement. The court will ultimately determine appropriate visitation and custody terms. I replied simply, I've never denied that our children are siblings. I'm open to reasonable arrangements that prioritize their well-being, to be determined through proper legal channels. His response was immediate and angry. Why are you making this so difficult? Why can't we just work this out between us? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The courts would handle it now. As my due date approached, Natalie helped me secure a small but comfortable 2-bedroom apartment near my office. Together, we painted the nursery a soothing sage green and assembled furniture ordered online. You're the strongest person I know, Natalie told me as we hung tiny clothes in the closet. Most people would have fallen apart, but look at you. Building a new life, preparing for this baby, standing your ground. I didn't have a choice, I replied, rubbing my now prominent belly. It wasn't just about me anymore. But the truth was more complex than that. Yes, my son had been my primary motivation for staying strong. But somewhere along the way, I had discovered a resilience in myself I hadn't known existed. The woman who had blindly trusted her husband and best friend was gone. In her place stood someone wiser, more cautious, but also more confident. Rachel called with news that made that confidence soar even higher. Derek's attorney has approached me about settlement talks, she reported. I think they're realizing their position isn't as strong as they initially thought. What are they offering? I asked. Full ownership of the house, appropriate child support, and a more reasonable visitation schedule than they were initially demanding, Rachel replied. It's a starting point for negotiations. But it suggests they're backing down from the aggressive stance they began with. Because they know they'll lose if we go to court, I surmised. Exactly, Rachel confirmed. The evidence of infidelity, financial deception, and Derek's behavior during your pregnancy complications doesn't paint him in a favorable light. Plus, his involvement with Stephanie and their new baby complicates his claim that he can provide a stable environment for your son. After careful consideration and several rounds of negotiation, we reached a settlement agreement that favored me significantly. I would keep the house, with Derek buying out my share so I could purchase my new apartment outright, receive substantial child support, and maintain primary physical custody of our son. Derek would have visitation rights on alternate weekends and one evening per week. As Rachel reviewed the final documents with me, she smiled. You know what impressed me most about you, Sophia? You never lost sight of what really mattered. You didn't get caught up in revenge or punishment. You stayed focused on creating security for yourself and your child. I thought about her words as I signed the papers that would formally end my marriage. Had I forgiven Derek and Stephanie? No. But I had channeled my anger and pain into productive action rather than destructive vengeance. And in doing so, I had created something valuable from the ashes of betrayal, a new beginning. Samuel Thomas Reynolds was born on a crisp November morning, 6 months after I discovered Derek and Stephanie's betrayal. At 7 pounds, 8 ounces. With a shock of dark hair and his father's chin, he was absolutely perfect. Natalie and my parents were at the hospital with me, forming a circle of love and support as I brought my son into the world. Derek had asked to be present for the birth, but I had declined. That moment was too sacred, too intimate to share with someone who had violated my trust so completely. He met his son the following day, awkwardly holding the tiny bundle while I watched from my hospital bed. A complex mixture of emotions swirling within me. "He's beautiful, Sophia," Derek said softly. "He has your eyes." I nodded, unable to deny the twinge of sadness that this moment, one we had once dreamed of sharing as loving partners, was now taking place under such different circumstances. The divorce had been finalized 1 month before Samuel's birth. The settlement had secured my financial future and given me primary custody, with Derek granted the visitation rights we had negotiated. It was as good an outcome as I could have hoped for, given the circumstances. Stephanie had made several attempts to reconcile our friendship, sending cards, flowers, and eventually a heartfelt letter acknowledging the depth of her betrayal. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I just want you to know that I understand now the magnitude of what I destroyed. Not just your marriage, but a friendship that meant everything to me. I will regret that for the rest of my life." I read her words without anger, but also without any desire to rebuild what had been broken. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be reconstructed. Some trust, once shattered, cannot be restored. I wished her well silently, from a distance, but maintained the boundary I had established. Life as a single mother was challenging, but deeply rewarding. Samuel was an easy baby, alert, curious, and generally content. My career continued to flourish, with Angela creating a new position for me that allowed more flexibility while recognizing my value to the company. "Working mothers are some of our most efficient employees," she observed when offering me the role. "You've accomplished more in your reduced hours than most people do in a full week. We'd be fools not to accommodate your new circumstances." Derek adhered to the visitation schedule religiously, clearly eager to establish a relationship with his son. He had moved into a new house with Stephanie and their daughter Lily, creating the family unit they had wanted. Our interactions remained strictly about Samuel, civil but distant. Patricia and Arthur, true to their word, remained loving grandparents to Samuel, sometimes picking him up for visits that didn't involve seeing Derek at all. Their loyalty to their grandson transcended the mess their son had created, and I was grateful for their presence in Samuel's life. I had found unexpected support in a group for single mothers that met weekly at a community center near my apartment. These women, each with their own story of resilience, became friends and confidants. Their understanding and practical advice helped me navigate the uncharted waters of raising a child on my own. "You're doing amazing, Julia," the group's unofficial leader told me one evening as we watched our children play together. "Some people take years to rebuild after the kind of betrayal you experienced. You've done it in months." "I didn't have the luxury of falling apart," I replied. "Samuel needed me to be strong." "Give yourself some credit," she insisted. "Necessity may have been the push, but the strength came from within you. It was always there." Perhaps she was right. The woman I had become was so different from the trusting, somewhat naive person I had been before. I was more cautious now, more selective about who I allowed into my inner circle. But I was also more confident, more self-reliant, and, ultimately, more at peace with myself. 6 months after Samuel's birth, I tentatively dipped my toe into the dating pool again. Nothing serious. Just coffee with a colleague's brother, dinner with a man I met at a work conference. These brief encounters served mainly to remind me that I was still young, still desirable, and still capable of connecting with others. Marcus, a pediatrician I met through the parents' group at Samuel's daycare, was the first to truly catch my interest. His gentle manner with the children, his thoughtful questions, and his respect for my boundaries made him stand out from the other men I had met. "I'd like to see you again," he said after our first dinner together. "But I understand if you need time." There's no rush. His patience was refreshing, and over the following months, we developed a relationship built on honesty, mutual respect, and careful consideration of Samuel's needs. Marcus had been through his own divorce years earlier and understood the complexities of blending new relationships with parenting responsibilities. Samuel will always come first, I told him plainly during one of our early conversations. As he should, Marcus agreed without hesitation. A good man wouldn't want it any other way. Those words, and the actions that consistently backed them up, helped me gradually lower the walls I had built around my heart. 1 year to the day after that fateful ultrasound appointment, I stood in my kitchen preparing Samuel's breakfast, reflecting on the journey I had traveled. From devastation to determination, from betrayal to rebuilding, I had transformed my life through sheer will and the love I held for my son. The pain had not disappeared entirely, perhaps it never would. But it had evolved into something more manageable, less raw. The anger had mellowed into a quiet resolve to live well, to raise my son with integrity, and to never settle for less than the respect and honesty I deserved. Samuel babbled happily in his high chair, reaching for the banana slices I had placed before him. His smile, so innocent and trusting, reminded me daily of what truly mattered. Not the past I couldn't change, but the future I was creating for us both. Derek and Stephanie had underestimated my strength. They had expected me to crumble, to accept whatever terms they offered out of desperation or fear. Instead, I had found a power within myself that I never knew existed, the power to stand alone, to rebuild from ashes, and to create a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one that had been taken from me. As I watched my son explore his world with endless curiosity and joy, I knew with absolute certainty that the greatest betrayal of my life had ultimately led me to my greatest triumph, becoming the woman I was always meant to be. Not a victim, but a survivor. Not defined by what was done to me, but by how I chose to respond. Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to discover your own inner strength? Sometimes our greatest challenges reveal capabilities we never knew we had. I'd love to hear your stories of resilience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own power today. Thank you for walking this path with me. And remember, you're stronger than you know.